It is now my pleasure to welcome District 17 to our meeting. We are looking forward to this conversation. Senator Kagan, Delegate Barve, Delegate Gilchrist, and Delegate Palakovich-Carr, you are welcome to turn your cameras on and your mics. For our community's information, the delegation is here this evening to discuss with us Rockville's state legislative priorities for the 2022 legislative session. And I will just begin by saying welcome, and we hope you have a better session this year with everything that you have going on than in previous times with COVID. I'll get to meet in person again, so welcome.
Amen. Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, thank you. Good to be here.
Yep. Ditto.
Dang.
Senator Kagan, how would you like to do this evening? Would you like to hear from us about I know you guys don't have a lot of time, so I want to know how you'd like to direct this. And I see Councilmember Ashton's hand.
Yeah, you're kind. Thank you. So obviously each of us has legislative initiatives that we'd love to share briefly with you. And I know that I think all of us saw you briefly the other night at the Maryland Municipal League with our new president, Rockville's own Council Member Ashton. And I know that that Rockville has a number of issues for us. So Madam Mayor, whatever makes sense to you all, I think we'll be fine with.
Yeah, I think, why don't you start? Because I think that's the most efficient way to proceed.
Super. I'll turn it to Councilmember Ashton for a minute.
Thank you. I know that we sent our priorities, and I also just wanted to highlight, additionally, we also sent a letter that we'd like to get some support on to M.SHA. There have been some very severe crashes as well as deaths on MD 355 Rockville Pike, as well as 28 and Veers Mill, which is 586. So I wanted to, and also 28. So we counted at the time, there were 52 fatalities and serious crashes. And I know it's something where the state has received some infrastructure funds, and I just wanted to see if you could help us to put in a plug. We do have a Rockville Pedestrian Advocacy Committee. We have been working very, very hard on Vision Zero and our pedestrian plan. But even if the city does everything right, if we do not get these dangerous state roads addressed and safer from an engineering perspective, we will also help on enforcement. We will still continue to see these fatalities and crashes and not meet our goals for Vision Zero.
So I think Delegate Palakovich-Carr ought to speak to that because she is a longtime leader on pedestrian safety. Colleagues, if that's okay, I think Julie can speak for us.
Go for it.
Yeah, well, thank you for flagging this important issue. Clearly, Vision Zero is something that it's great for the city to be working on. The county's been working on it, and the state's clearly has its role to be playing as well. So it's been about 2 years since the state's Vision Zero law went into effect. And as the lead sponsor of that legislation, I've been keeping a close eye in terms of what's been happening with implementation. Unfortunately, here in Maryland and nationwide, we've been going in the wrong direction in terms of traffic fatalities. And I've been a little bit frustrated with, I'll say, the pace of change of the culture at the state level in terms of actually fully embracing Vision Zero. This, on the legislative front, this upcoming session, there's actually going to be a package of bills. I'm actually organizing some other members of the General Assembly who are working on issues related to pedestrian and bicyclist safety. So I think we're going to see a number of bills on that front. I'm actually working on a bill with Senator Jeff Waldstreicher, who represents District 18 in nearby Kensington, on a piece of legislation that would require the State Highway Administration to investigate each pedestrian and bicyclist fatality on a state roadway and actually come up with concrete ideas for how to improve the safety on those particular stretches of roadway or intersections. Unfortunately, we've seen too many times where crashes keep happening, as you just pointed out, in the same places, and the safety initiatives just aren't getting there on the ground. Otherwise, let me highlight that maybe another avenue for advocacy for the city right now is the state's development of a pedestrian, it's called the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. There was a meeting just very recently about the status of that plan. And there are 2 roadways, I think, actually in Rockville that have been identified as priority areas for safety improvements by the state. And that includes Veers Mill Road, as well as part of 355 in the vicinity of Town Center. I think public comments are going to be continuing for several more weeks on that plan. And so there could be an opportunity there, excuse me, for the city to weigh in through that effort as well.
And I'd like to add just one more item, Councilmember Ashton, before you go, which is related but not directly, is there's going to be conversation about legalization of cannabis. And once again, I'm coming back with DUID, driving under the influence of drugs. And I can tell you that pedestrian and bicyclists in every state that has legalized, in addition to drivers, that has legalized cannabis has had an enormous uptick in impaired drivers and again, injuries and fatalities. And so in my opinion, we've got to be able to look at both before we even consider legalization. So I'm going to be bringing that back and have already spoken to leadership about it.
Yeah, I just want to say that when I saw the map, I only today saw the map that you included of where all the pedestrian problems occurred. And I definitely want to work with you with the Department of Transportation. So let's talk tomorrow and after this so that I can commence that process as the chair of the Environment and Transportation Committee, because I think I'd be able to get right straight to the top of the chain of command in that fashion.
That's wonderful, and we would appreciate any and all help. And we know it's a two-edged sword, whatever you want to say, in terms of moving traffic, but also being safe. And we've discussed this with 270, which is another one of our priorities, and continue to ask for your support on our efforts there to protect the community, because it is so vital that we don't just move traffic, but we give people options that help our help with equity, but also the environment as well. One other one along with that line is the restoration of HUR funding. And on the TPB meeting last week, Delegate Krim brought up, in terms of some other things that were going on, the need for finding new funding for this. And if we take from one pot, we have to add back to it. So I hope that you all will have success this year and maybe putting together a work group that would be MML, MACO, the General Assembly, whomever, to try to come up with ideas for a new funding source for the Transportation Trust Fund. Because we know we need that, but we just can't continue to rely on the gas tax. It's not going to be enough, especially as we strive to go to electric vehicles in the state.
Right. Yeah, that's right. As we electrify, that's going to displace the revenue source from the gasoline tax. So yeah, it's something we are definitely going to have to give serious consideration to over the next couple of years.
Exactly. Councilmember Prashela, did you want to add in?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to say that I thought that the write-up for our brief book on I-270 kind of understated our position. That is not, that we really are against this widening altogether. And I can just give you my impression of the state legislature writ large, having visited the last couple years. There are environmental concerns, sure, we all know about that. But I just think the state legislature has not muscled its way into the financial conversation. And I think there's a lot of assumptions being made by the governor and the proponents of this. I think there's, unfortunately, the state treasurer asked for some money for a particular study and that was not granted. I'm just hoping that you all can actually grant that money and get that study done. I think it was a good idea, even though she's now retired. But, I think it's really a turkey from many perspectives. And it's turkey environmentally, it's a turkey financially, it's a turkey for Rockville and the impacts on Rockville. And I think we really need to have the state legislature and our own delegation weigh in very heavily on this.
Well, I think we've weighed in very aggressively, and it's wrong to suggest that we have not. It's also wrong to suggest that the House of Delegates has not acted decisively. And while I have my disagreements with the Senate, I again want to underscore the fact that Cheryl is not the problem. So really, you need to take it up with the Montgomery County senators who sit on the Budget and Tax Committee, because that is where the sticking point is. It's certainly not in the District 17 delegation, and it's certainly not in the House of Delegates.
Thank you, Delegate Barve. Thank you, Kumar. Adding on just a couple of things. Councilmember Pershela, thank you for your steadfast leadership on this. I just want to mention that, as you referenced, our state treasurer resigned. Her last day was Friday, and she has been succeeded by a House colleague. We have all served with him, Derek Davis, and when he was calling around dialing for votes, I know that I engaged him in a conversation about 270, and he said that he would continue former Treasurer Kopp's steadfast position and expressing concerns and opposition to 270. So I want to mention that. What we needed to do was educate and persuade our state comptroller, Peter Francho, who unfortunately is not listening to Montgomery County's voters and activists. I was the only legislator in the entire state, actually, that went down to testify before the Board of Public Works when they were, before they took their vote. And I went down to Annapolis and made the case that many of us have talked about. And Delegate Polakovich-Carr drafted a really strong letter, a follow-up letter that we all signed. So we are doing our best, but we are 4 votes out of 188. And we are vocal and we are active, but we can only do what we can do. So we will, I think I speak for all of us saying we will continue to express our concerns.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Ashton.
Thank you. I did see some of the letters that you have put forward and have watched your testimony. I wanted to thank you for speaking up for Rockville on that. I'm sure you have seen and have even written about the fact that there may be some land taken, especially at like Julius West School. We have concerns about that. We also have concerns about the sound that even now is affecting so many neighborhoods. That sound barrier was supposed to be put there a long time ago, and we're still waiting for that. So I really appreciate what you've done, and I would love to continue to see your support on that. I did also want to just go back to the Vision Zero piece just quickly. I know I talked about the pedestrian bicycle crashes and fatalities. I also just wanted to flag that we did a comprehensive plan that looked at transforming 355 into a multimodal community and allowing more housing. And so in order to accomplish that, we have to make it welcoming and safe. And so I would just request to perhaps get some assistance on bringing the leaders together with MDOT, SHA to have a discussion on how we can work together. Recognize it takes both, the county, the city, and the state, and I would appreciate your help on that. I also wanted to just speak to my role as the liaison for the Rockville Environment Commission and support climate change and advocacy initiatives. We support floodplain planning. We saw some flooding in our county like no other. And I just wanted to just quickly note that also support climate resiliency and community choice aggregation, among other electric vehicle incentives and renewable energy.
Councilmember Ashton, before we shift to environment, you said one thing that I just wanted to snag. You talked about working with the state and the county as well as the city of Rockville. And I just want to remind anyone watching, as well as the mayor and council, that it was this current county council that ultimately signed off on the 270 plan with 5 of the 9. So a bare majority, but it was a majority. And that meant that that was kind of a fig leaf for some people to then say, oh, well, look, the county supports it. So despite the fact that the executive and the significant opposition came from the county council, it makes our job harder when the county council has weighed in favor. And they said they thought they were getting a bunch of money for mass transit. It is unclear when, where, and how, and if that would ever come through.
Very true. And just so you know, it did flip the vote at the Transportation Planning Board meeting. So yeah, no small disaster there. So thank you. A couple other things that kind of go along with what Councilmember Ashton just said is this year we are also asking to advocate for legislation that would increase the fine for illegally altering automobiles with modified exhaust systems. We are asking for the fine to be increased dramatically so that it's really a deterrent. And Councilmember Ashton mentioned the noise. You all know, you all live here in the city, you hear it all the time. It's now become just across the board. And I was on a mayor's meeting recently with the mayors from Montgomery County and Prince George's County. And all the mayors agreed that this would be something that we would each support. So just giving that to you as well.
So, Madam Mayor, none of us are on the judicial committees in the House or the Senate, but I can tell you that last year, after I had some experiences in Gaithersburg and in Rockville and heard from constituents, I actually had an extended conversation. I've now spoken to him more than once with Rockville's wonderful police chief, Chief Brito. And we talked about it. I made the connection to the vice chair of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, Jeff Waldstreicher, who was already referenced here. He's going to be our hero of the evening potentially, but the challenge, honestly, and I'm just going to be really frank, police have their hands full. They are already just so put upon, depressed, criticized, and there's a fear. And with the reality of Freddie Gray and George Floyd and too many tragic incidents, the whole idea of a police officer pulling someone over because their muffler is too noisy, as much as we might all really dislike it, there is just an opportunity for tragedy. And so I'm not sure, and I'm just going to do the political reality here. I'm not sure that I can envision significant legislation or authorizing legislation moving forward this year in light of everything that's been going on. I don't know, colleagues, if any of you disagree with me, but
Well,
that's the latest that
I agree with you. I agree with you, Senator. Also, the other thing is that as a general rule, the judiciary always reflexively opposes any law that increases fines and penalties because they see it as their prerogative. And a lot of legislators listen to the judiciary when they object to things like this. And so it's always a very difficult, hard lift to increase fines. We had difficulty increasing fines for people who drive around school buses, which is something that absolutely nobody wants to see happen in our communities. And so, I'm not giving up on the matter. We're certainly going to work on it in our committee. I'm going to work on it very aggressively, but it's tough. And the senator is right. The testimony that we've seen, not so much on the House side, but on the Senate side, was one of concern that regulations like this would fall
disproportionately
heavily on poor neighborhoods and poorer communities. And I think that concern is a bit overblown, but the concern exists.
Right. Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Oh, if I can just briefly add on this front, I concur with what my colleagues have said, I think, about the political reality. There will be a couple of bills introduced. Delegate Mary Lehman, who serves on the House Environment and Transportation Committee, is working on a couple of bills, one related to speed contests, and the other would affect and increase the fines for loud vehicles, vehicles with modified exhausts. I'll also note that last week I organized a letter, Delegate Barve and a couple of the other House members who've been active in this area. We sent letters to some of the companies that do automated technology for, say, like red light cameras, for speed cameras, just to see if this was an issue that any of them are working on and looking to bring to market, because it doesn't appear to be any kind of automated technology solution on the market at the moment. Several of the companies said they were not aware of this issue. They were going to look into it, but actually one company that's based here in Maryland responded just today and said that they actually are working to bring technology to the market. They were involved in a pilot program in Paris, France in recent years. And so actually there might be another option that could be available in the marketplace to the city, to the counties in the not too distant future.
That's great news. Thank you, Delegate. Thank you. Councilmember Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep it brief, and thank you all, the D17 delegation, for coming for us this evening. Just want to tie 2 points that were mentioned, one in terms of equity and the other in terms of environment. And enjoying those and thinking about the advocacy that was mentioned by our colleague, Councilmember Ashton, with regard to the climate change policies. I would just ask that when we think about climate change, that any legislation considered or passed does look to equity. I think while it is time to think about electronic vehicles, making sure that charging stations are equitably distributed, particularly in those neighborhoods that have been left behind. And also being mindful that everybody might not be able to purchase an EV or electric vehicle, and making sure that we're still advocating for safe and reliable public transit. And I appreciate Senator Kagan's help with us to that end as well. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, let me say that I've been working very closely with the chair of the Senate EHEA committee, Senator Kagan's committee, in putting together a comprehensive climate solutions fleet of, a collection of bills. And I have to tell you that equity and environmental justice are at the top of our consideration. We've been working closely with the advocates on this. At the end of the day, though, I have to say, especially for communities in urban settings, and this is primarily people who live in Baltimore City or in the Washington metro area, south of the Beltway, inside of the Beltway rather, the primary source of pollutants, 85 to 90% are from vehicle exhausts, whether it's carbon monoxide or particulate. And so our attempt to move more rapidly in the direction of electrification is all a part of not just cleaning up the environment and reducing carbon intensity, but also in improving healthcare outcomes for people, especially in urban settings. So I want to thank you for highlighting that and assure you that this is uppermost in our consideration.
Terrific, thank you. Councilmember Ashton.
Thank you. And to that end, I thank you for your leadership on that, and to all of you who have spoken on climate change. I did want to also flag that there are efforts, and I'd love to see more, to get more renewable energy, particularly in public housing. There's some issues that it's not as much of an incentive, but I'd like to see how we can work together to help public housing as well as low-income housing, either do changes to heat pumps or weatherization. I know that there are some grants available for that, but I think that is going to be an important strategy. There have been some studies that show that those who are low income are paying more for utilities than others. And it's because of some of the issues with not being able to make those kinds of upgrades. So I would definitely support that. And I also greatly agree on some of the where the issues are coming from, buildings as well as cars. We're going to have to grapple with that. And also just, we all have seen the tragedy that's happened in this community with some of the flood planning. We're going to really need some help. It's very expensive to do stormwater management. And it's something we're looking at the city. We're looking to how we can leverage federal money as well. But I think that we can potentially expect more floods more frequently, and we have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, let me just say that in my working with Senator Pinsky, chair of the EHEA committee in the Senate, the Environment, Health, and Education Committee, we are moving in the direction of electrifying everything. And that means buildings, it means heat pumps, it means electric boilers for water, it means better insulation, a better building envelope in order to hold in heat and expel heat during the summertime. I have to tell you though, when it comes to renewable energy, nothing beats solar panels in fields, and nothing beats wind turbines offshore and in rural settings. Solar panels on roofs are probably one of the most expensive forms of electricity, and that's backed up by analysis by the U.S. Department of Energy and Lazard Inc. And several other analysts. And I know we all love rooftop solar, but for the same amount of money, when you put a solar panel at ground level, you buy 4 times as many clean electrons as you do on a rooftop. It's just a fact of engineering and accounting. So really, when it comes to buildings, really, it's all about heat pumps, geothermal, and insulation.
Great, thank you. Council, it looks like you want to say something, Senator Kagan.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I don't know when to start weaving in our own stuff, but I have 5 environmental bills this year as vice chair of the committee that Kumar keeps referencing. We're the largest Senate committee with the most bills and the largest, broadest jurisdiction, and we keep busy. But one of the ones I'm working on is very exciting and frankly, sort of groundbreaking. And I mentioned it to Jamie Raskin, and 4 pages of the federal infrastructure bill ended up creating the program that I'm pushing to create in Maryland. It's getting a lot of support so far, but this is the first time I've talked about it publicly. And it's creating a revolving fund for nonprofits to be able to make environmental improvements because they don't have the cash flow. So helping them buy in at a reasonable level and then repay as they realize cost savings is really exciting. And I just had another call with the National Council of Environmental Legislators. We've talked to National Council of State Legislators and Sierra Club and League of Conservation Voters and faith institutions and so many folks, but it's really exciting. And now we are going to see if we can move it forward. I've already talked to some of the budget people. Folks are pretty excited about it.
Excellent. Congratulations. Good.
Thank you. Well, congratulations if it passes.
Exactly.
You can watch for that, and I'd love to have Rockville weighing in because, again, nonprofits. So whether we're thinking about a food pantry like Manna, whether we're thinking about a group home for those with disabilities, I mean, there isn't necessarily the revenue, the cash flow to be able to do that. But again, as Delegate Barve said, I mean, there is a savings and it is long standing. And whether that's, we are including geothermal. We think wind is not going to make any sense for most of Maryland, but we're looking at geothermal and solar as good options. So more to come.
Good. Do you want to do your other 4 now, and then we'll go to the delegates?
Sure. This is just the other 4 on environmental bills.
Well, you
Just
said
to
you
be
had
clear.
5. No.
I had 5, no, I have 30 bills, which is the max of Senate bills. I'm not going to go through 30 bills, or you guys will be here till your traditional midnight. But if it's okay, I'll just do the quick overview, which is I continue my work in Rockville resident Carl Henn's memory, and I have 6 911 bills, 5 environmental bills, 5 election bills, I think 4 consumer protection bills. I already talked about drug driving. I have a mix of a lot of exciting thing. I'm doing transparency again and privacy, and I've got a big mix. But if environment is of special interest right now, I think folks watching probably remember the artificial turf that was dumped in Rockville near the rink, and I want to give a shout out to Rockville staff that helped make sure that that was disposed of properly. But I'm working with a House colleague to have a better chain of custody. Working with another House colleague on smart salt to make sure that we're not putting more salt to avoid ice and snow and avoid lawsuits. But the snow, I mean, and we want to do that. We want to keep people safe, but we can do smart salt certification so that the salt isn't running off and killing some of our vegetation and stuff in the Chesapeake Bay and other waterways. So we're working on that. I have to remember all of them here because there are pesticide authority. Right now, the Maryland Department of Agriculture, which has a very keen interest in doing what farmers want, make all the decisions as to what pesticides should be allowed and at what level. So I have a bill to shift that to the Department of the Environment in consultation with Ag and the Department of Health. We think that's going to result in much more prudent decisions and recommendations being made. And then the last environmental bill is about coal tar sealant, and a delegate from just next door got that through the House last year. We got it out of the Senate committee, but it died when we ran out of time on the final evening of session. But coal tar sealants, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, Home Depot don't even carry it anymore because it's toxic. Toddlers, pets, and bottom of our shoes bring it in if we put it on our driveway, and then we inhale it. It's toxic and carcinogenic. And so why are we selling that in our stores? So again, a lot of places won't sell it now. We're just going to make that official to try to, and there are alternatives available. So those are the 5 environmental bills, in addition to the nonprofits and having renewable energy in a revolving fund available.
Super, thank you, and we look forward to working with you on as many as we can. Delegate Barve, would you like to give us?
90% of my work is going to be on climate change issues. And I am going to again have my constitutional amendment to allow candidates for governor to be able to choose their running mate after the primary. It won't work for this election, of course, but it's something that I think is a sensible thing to do in the Constitution. We'll see if it works this year. I have a lot that I'm doing. I'm just not going to mention all of it because I would literally take up 4 hours.
Well, thank you for all you're doing as well. Councilmember, sorry, Delegate Gilchrist.
Thank you very much. And I do want to say that it's great working with Linda Moran on your staff. She's always available and responsive to us. Pam Casemeyer in Annapolis is doing a great job, and we appreciate her there. I see that I see from the agenda memo tonight, you forwarded a number of items to MML, and we have a good working relationship with Scott Hancock and that entire office there. So I just want to thank everyone in this process, and thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for working with us tonight and events all the time, you know, slightly restrained because of COVID for good reasons. I might want to underscore a few things that we've already talked about. A couple of months ago, when State Highway came for the Montgomery County Roadshow, the Secretary of Transportation talked about increases in aggressive driving, increases in crashes and deaths, and then passed it off to the MVA administrator, who added that there's been a real increase in drunk driving and drug driving. And it's bad lessons that have been learned during this, when so few cars were on the road during the beginning of COVID. So we hope we're seeing some bad statistics, and it's part of the conversation. The county delegation is already looking at, the school bus issue, maybe revising some speed camera policies to see if we can address some of those issues. But unfortunately, it's been going the wrong way lately, despite years of progress. And as we said, Delegate Polakovich-Carr had in a bill, some time ago about Vision Zero, and we're continuing to work on that angle as well. So I'll also just add on the environment front, there's some stream restoration management issues we'll be working on this session. We're hearing complaints about the process for approving those, even when they need to be done for good environmental reasons. They're getting lost in the process. So we're going to be looking at that. Building on some of maybe last year's legislation concerning urban trees and trees around the state. There's old growth forests in the state, which may need some extra protection. And old growth forests are some of the most important trees and forests in the environment. So, Madam Mayor and Council, thank you for having us here, and I look forward to continuing to work with you during session.
Thank you, Delegate Gilchrist, and I would be remiss if I didn't recognize that this is the last year that you will be one of our delegates, and to thank you on behalf of the City of Rockville for your service and your support for issues that have meant the most to our community. So thank you so much, and we wish you a really successful final term. So thank you for all you've done. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a real honor to be a delegate for Gaithersburg and Rockville, and especially this being my hometown.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Delegate Polakovich-Carr, not last, but welcome back. It's your turn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, in the interest of time, let me just highlight one more issue that hasn't come up so far this evening. I do have a full plate of bills, but one of the areas I'm working on for this session is around affordable housing. I've heard that's been an issue that's been before the mayor and council a lot this past year, and I do expect that there's going to be a number of pieces of legislation introduced, at least on the House side, to that end. The bill that I'm working on has to do with state-owned properties and looking for opportunities of where we have excess state property, whether that's a building or land that might be better used for affordable housing, and then allowing the state basically to donate that real estate to a nonprofit that's going to build affordable housing, or in many cases right now when the state has surplus assets, including land, it gets sold. But in that case, going forward, that these properties, then that money would be used to actually generate funding that could be used for affordable housing on other locations. But like I said, I expect that there's going to be some other bills introduced to this front as well. And I'm sure Pam Casemeyer will keep you all abreast of what's happening in Annapolis on that issue.
We absolutely would love to work with you on that. There are several places in the city that I think, one in particular, when we pass the Stone Street Master Plan, I think we have some big ideas for that property. So thank you. Councilmember Pershalo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to thank all the members of our District 17 delegation. I'm going to follow up on the I-270 thing very specifically. Is there a chance that the state legislature can provide the funds for that study that the state treasurer wanted? And if not, can we get the RFP that she prepared, but wasn't funded?
Well, let me just say that I believe that in the transportation budget, if the governor doesn't put the money in the budget, it doesn't get spent. Now, that's going to change next year because we altered the Constitution of the state of Maryland to allow the legislature to move money back and forth between categories. But I believe I think what you're asking for is a operating expenditure, and that can only be added to the budget by the governor of the state of Maryland, I believe.
So two things I would add to what Delegate Barve just said. So first off, Councilmember Pershale, it's a really interesting idea. And Kumar is right that it's next year. And I just want to clarify, that's not calendar year, that's fiscal year. And so this is not a January item. This is a year and a half away. But second, what I wonder is whether there could be, and Kumar, I don't know, when Kumar's back. I don't know whether.
I'm sorry, I had something I had to attend to.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But I wonder about budget language. So I'm worried about the timing, Mark, is that by the time we got money for a study, the study completed, by that time, all of the work, the new contract would have already been vetted, completed, and all that. So what I wonder if there's something that says X can't happen until there's a study. And I wonder if budget language might be a possibility. Maybe we can brainstorm about that. So
yeah, I think we have to bring it up with
That's a
the
different-
appropriators. I think you got a good point there.
yeah,
Right, thank you for that.
good concept, Mark.
Is it
Thank you.
possible for us to get the language of what she was asking for? I mean,
She knew. Oh,
Yeah, she
Treasurer
must have- the treasurer, yeah, she must have had an RFP ready.
That's a great question. I can follow up with her staff. And
Yeah.
I think some are still there. Some might have left with her, but we can check on that, or I can just ask her.
All right,
What-
thank you very
what
much.
she's got.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was with her over the weekend, so I'm happy to follow up on that.
Great suggestion.
And
Well,
I just want to say, I'm using a Rockville mug here. And so for my tea, known for the companies we keep, and it's a ready mug, but we are ready to work with Rockville on jobs and so much more.
And we feel the same. Thank you all so very much for your time and all the effort that you put in on behalf of Rockville and our residents. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening. A very
Okay, thank
healthy and
you.
happy holiday and a blessed new year.
Holidays. Thank
Happy
you
holidays.
all.
Very much.
You
Take
too.
care.
All right, thanks everybody. Thank you.